I've been married for over 25 years. 25 years of building a life, raising children, navigating the mundane rhythms of long-term partnership. I thought I knew my husband. I thought I knew what loyalty looked like. I was wrong. What I discovered about my husband and the woman he was having an affair with changed my life forever. But it wasn't just the affair that shattered me. It was what came after. The lies, the manipulation, the audacity. So I did something I never imagined myself capable of. I became patient. I became strategic. And over 18 months, I dismantled her life, one carefully timed letter at a time. This is the story of how betrayal turned me into someone I didn't recognize, and how I made sure she faced consequences she never saw coming. If you've ever felt the sting of betrayal or wondered what it truly takes to reclaim your life after being wronged, hit that like button, subscribe, and stay with me until the very end, because you're going to want to see every step of this story. My name is Lisa, and for most of my adult life, I believed in the quiet power of stability. Benjamin and I had been married for over a quarter century. We had children together, a home we'd built from scratch, routines that felt like rituals. Sunday morning coffee on the porch, Thursday night dinners at our favorite Italian place, the way he'd kiss my forehead before leaving for work. These weren't grand gestures. They were the threads that wove our marriage together. I wasn't naive. I knew marriages required work. I knew passion ebbed and flowed, that I trusted him completely, without question. That trust was the foundation of everything. Looking back now, I wonder if there were signs I missed. Did he seem distant during those months? Did his phone habits change? Maybe, but when you trust someone for 25 years, you don't scrutinize their every move. You don't interrogate late-night phone calls or weekend business trips. You assume the best because that's what love does. Until the day you discover you were wrong. It was 9 months after it ended when I found out. I was reconciling our phone bill, a mundane Tuesday afternoon task, when I noticed a number that appeared dozens of times, then hundreds. The pattern stretched back 18 months, long conversations, late nights, a frequency that couldn't be explained away as business or friendship. Helena. When I confronted Benjamin that evening, he stood in our kitchen, the same kitchen where we'd hosted countless family dinners, and the color drained from his face. His hands trembled as he reached for the back of a chair. "Who is she?" I asked, my voice steadier than I felt. He couldn't meet my eyes. Someone I met on a conference. It was stupid, Lisa. It's over. It ended months ago. 18 months. I held up the printed phone records. You talked to her for 18 months. He crumbled then, admitted everything. The affair had lasted the entire time. 18 months of my life spent blissfully unaware that my husband was sharing pieces of himself with someone else. They'd met in person twice. She knew about me the entire time. She knew he was married, knew I existed, and she pursued him anyway. The rage came first. White hot and blinding. I wanted to scream, to break things, to make him feel even a fraction of the pain tearing through my chest. Then came the grief, a hollow, aching loss that felt like mourning someone who was still alive. But beneath the rage and grief, something else stirred, something colder, more calculating. I could have left him, filed for divorce, divided our assets, moved on with my dignity intact. But that felt too simple. Helena had known about me, had chosen to disrespect my marriage, and then walked away unscathed while I was left to pick up the pieces.
That night, I sat alone in our bedroom. Benjamin had moved to the guest room without being asked and made a decision. If Helena thought she could move on without consequences, she was mistaken. I was about to spend the next 18 months teaching her exactly what it felt like to have your life unraveled by someone else's choices. And I was going to take my time doing it. 3 weeks after discovering the affair, I picked up the phone and called her. My hands were steady. My voice was calm. I'd rehearsed what I wanted to say, not out of nervousness, but out of control. I needed to hear her voice. I needed to understand who this woman was who thought she could dismantle my marriage without consequence. She answered on the third ring. "Hello? Helena?" My tone was neutral, almost friendly. A pause. "Yes. Who is this?" "This is Lisa, Benjamin's wife." The silence that followed felt electric. I could hear her breathing, could almost feel her mind racing to calculate her next move. When she finally spoke, her voice had shifted, practiced, defensive. "Oh, Lisa, I didn't expect to hear from you." "I'm sure you didn't. I know about the affair. All of it. 18 months, the calls, the meetings." Another pause. Then, incredibly, she laughed, a short, nervous sound that made my jaw clench. "Look, I don't know what Benjamin told you, but my family already knows about everything. My husband knows, my daughters know. There are no secrets here." The audacity nearly stole my breath. She wasn't just lying, she was trying to neutralize me, to make me believe there was nothing left to expose, nowhere for my anger to land. "I see," I said quietly. "Thank you for clarifying." I hung up before she could respond. Sitting in my kitchen, phone still in my hand, the afternoon light slanting through the windows Benjamin had installed 5 years ago, I felt something shift. The rage was still there, but it had transformed into something sharper, something patient. If Helena's family truly knew, they wouldn't care about letters. But if she was lying, and I suspected she was, then the truth would detonate her carefully constructed world. I opened my laptop and began compiling phone records. I just needed to be strategic, methodical. I needed to wait for the right moment. And I had all the time in the world. 2 months after my phone call with Helena, time I'd spent watching Benjamin's quiet remorse from afar, his attempts at reconciliation met with my measured silence, I sat at my kitchen table and wrote 3 letters. Not emails, not text messages, physical letters on cream-colored stationery. There's something about a handwritten envelope that demands attention, that can't be deleted or ignored with a swipe of the finger. I wanted Helena's husband to hold the evidence in his hands. I wanted her daughters to read the words on paper, to feel the weight of what their mother had done. I kept the letters factual, no melodrama, no begging for sympathy, just the truth. Dates, duration, the nature of the affair. I included printed phone records showing the pattern of calls between Helena and Benjamin. Hundreds of them, 18 months worth of evidence that couldn't be denied. The envelope to her husband was addressed in my careful handwriting. Mr. David Brennan, 2847 Oakwood Drive. I'd found the address easily. Social media made people careless about privacy. I mailed them on a Tuesday morning at the post office 3 towns over. Then I waited. 4 days later, my phone rang. Helena's number. I let it ring twice before answering. "What did you do?" Her voice was shaking, stripped of the smooth confidence she'd wielded during our first conversation. "Why would you send those letters? I told you my family already knew." "Did they?" "Yes. And now you've created chaos for nothing. My daughters are hysterical. My husband is—" She stopped, and I could hear her struggling to breathe. You had no right. Helena, I said softly, if your family truly knew, those letters wouldn't have caused any reaction at all, would they? The silence on the other end told me everything. Over the following week, fragments of the fallout reached me through a mutual acquaintance, someone who knew Helena's sister. The daughters had been blindsided, completely unaware their mother had carried on an affair for a year and a half. The younger daughter, Emily, had stopped speaking to her. The older one, Sarah, had called demanding explanations Helena couldn't give. Her husband had apparently suspected, but never confirmed. Now he had undeniable proof on paper, in black and white. Helena's carefully maintained facade had cracked, and I felt something I hadn't felt in months. Power. This wasn't about cruelty, it was about consequences. Helena had made choices, deliberate, sustained choices that affected real people. My marriage, my trust, my sense of reality. She'd gambled that she could walk away clean, that her lies would protect her.
But I was patient. I didn't know it yet, but Helena was about to discover that when you dismantle someone's life, they learn how to return the favor, slowly, methodically, and with surgical precision. The cat and mouse game had begun. 6 months after sending the first letters, months in which Benjamin hovered on the edges of our home, his guilt manifesting in small, unspoken ways like leaving the house spotless or avoiding my gaze during dinners, I discovered something that changed everything. I was going through old iCloud backups, something I'd avoided initially because I wasn't sure I could handle what I'd find. But curiosity and the need for complete truth finally won. I sat in my home office, Benjamin at work, and clicked through archived messages with my heart pounding. Buried in a conversation from 14 months ago, I found it. Can't stop thinking about last night. You're incredible. When can I see you again? Benjamin's response. Soon. I'll figure something out. This week was perfect. They'd been physical, not just once during those 2 in-person meetings, but intimate, deliberate. The messages were explicit enough to leave no room for interpretation. Helena had minimized it. I'd heard through mutual friends that she told people it was mostly emotional, that the physical aspect was barely anything. More lies. I sat with that information for a week, let it fuel what came next. I got a new phone number, purchased with cash at a store across town, activated under a fake name. Then I sent Helena a text, brief and vague enough to pass as Benjamin. We need to talk. Can you call me? She called within 10 minutes. Benjamin, is this really you? Why are you using a different number? I said nothing, just listened, phone pressed to my ear in the silence of my car parked behind a grocery store. The air inside was stale, laced with a faint scent of spilled coffee from the cup holder. Outside, cartwheels rattled across asphalt. Distant engines hummed. A child's laughter pierced the afternoon haze. Benjamin, please talk to me. I need to know what's happening. Your wife, she's been sending things to my family. My daughters won't speak to me. My husband is questioning everything. Her voice cracked. Did you tell her to do this? Did you give her permission to destroy my life? Permission to destroy her life? The irony was almost beautiful, as if she needed permission to destroy mine. I don't understand why she won't stop, Helena continued, her voice breaking now. It's been months. What does she want from me? I've already lost so much. My daughters look at me like I'm a stranger. My marriage is... She stopped, and I heard her crying softly. I made a mistake. I know that. But this feels like punishment without end. It started as something exciting, an escape from the routine.
I told myself it wouldn't hurt anyone if no one knew. Her words hung in the air, revealing a glimpse of her reasoning. Selfish, compartmentalized, convinced secrecy equals safety. I hung up. Sitting in that parking lot, the vinyl seat warm against my back, exhaust fumes drifting through the cracked window, I felt something crystallize. This wasn't about vengeance anymore. It was about accountability. Helena had made choices knowing the consequences existed. She'd simply gambled she'd never have to face them. I opened my laptop and began drafting the next letters. This time, I'd include the screenshots, the explicit messages, the proof of physical infidelity she'd lied about. Her daughters deserved the full truth. The second round of letters was different, more surgical, more devastating. I printed the screenshots on high-quality paper, the explicit messages between Helena and Benjamin that proved beyond any doubt that their affair had been physical, intimate, and sustained. I compiled them carefully, chronologically, so the progression of their relationship was undeniable, each message timestamped, each exchange documented. Then I addressed 2 envelopes, one to Sarah, one to Emily. Not to Helena's husband this time, just to her daughters. I knew what that would do. A husband might forgive, might rationalize, might choose to preserve the marriage despite betrayal. But daughters? Daughters who'd been lied to repeatedly, who'd been told it was mostly emotional and barely physical. They would feel the betrayal differently, more personally. I mailed them on a Monday. By Thursday, both daughters had cut contact with Helena completely. Sarah's Instagram story featured a quote about choosing peace over toxic relationships that her privacy settings hadn't hidden from my carefully anonymous account. Emily changed her phone number. The automated message confirmed it when Helena tried reaching Benjamin through her old line. Helena spiraled. She tried calling Benjamin repeatedly, frantic, desperate calls that I intercepted by monitoring his phone. I'd mapped his schedule meticulously by then, anticipating when he'd be in meetings or away from his device. I deleted her voicemails before he could hear them. I blocked her new numbers as quickly as she cycled through them. She was screaming into a void. Through my acquaintance who knew the family, I heard fragments of her unraveling. She'd stopped going to family gatherings. She'd taken time off work, citing personal issues. Her husband had moved into the guest room. She was isolated, not by accident, but by design. This was psychological warfare. I wasn't touching her directly, wasn't harassing her or threatening her. I was simply ensuring that the truth kept surfacing, that her lies couldn't be buried, that the people she deceived understood the full scope of what she'd done. Helena had controlled the narrative for 18 months during the affair. She decided when to call Benjamin, what to say, how much of herself to reveal. She held all the power then. Now, I held it. She couldn't reach Benjamin, couldn't repair things with her daughters, couldn't spin a new version of events because I'd already provided the evidence. Every avenue she'd used to maintain control was closed. And she was beginning to realize that this wouldn't end quickly, that I was patient, that I was willing to stretch this out for as long as it took. 18 months, to be exact. 1 month for every month she'd spent with my husband. Patience became my greatest weapon. I discovered Helena's work number through a simple LinkedIn search. Her company profile listed her direct line. The information sat in my notes app for 6 months, a quiet promise, while life at home settled into a fragile new normal. Benjamin's tentative gestures of atonement, my guarded responses, the unspoken tension threading our days. I'm not impulsive anymore. I'd learned that reactive anger accomplished nothing, but strategic, calculated pressure applied at precisely the right moment, that changed everything. through social media, accounts Helena's daughters hadn't thought to make private, I learned that Sarah was getting married. The engagement announcement appeared in March, bright and celebratory. Save the dates followed soon after. The wedding was planned for late May at the Riverside Estate. Venue booked, dress chosen, registry completed. Helena was not involved in any of it. As the date approached, building from quiet planning to frantic final preparations, I made my move. 2 weeks before the wedding, on a Tuesday afternoon, I called her work number. It rang 4 times before going to voicemail. I kept my message brief, my voice calm and almost pleasant. "Helena, this is Lisa. I noticed Sarah's wedding is coming up soon. It's at the Riverside Estate, isn't it? Beautiful venue. I've heard wonderful things. I'm sure it will be a lovely day for your family." I hung up. I never said I was coming, never made a direct threat. I simply let her know that I knew, that I was aware, that I was watching, that her daughter's most important day was on my radar. The paranoia that must have gripped her after that message was exactly what I'd intended. Would I show up at the wedding? Would I cause a scene? Would I hand out copies of the affair evidence to wedding guests? Helena had no way of knowing. And that uncertainty, that constant gnawing fear, was more powerful than any direct confrontation could have been. My acquaintance reported back, Helena spent the week before the wedding in a state of barely contained panic. She called the venue multiple times asking about security protocols. She begged Sarah to let her attend, promising she'd stay in the background, invisible, unobtrusive. Sarah refused. The refusal wasn't because of me. It was because Helena had burned that bridge months ago with her lies. Helena wasn't at her own daughter's wedding, not because I stopped her, but because her choices had already severed that relationship beyond repair. I'd simply reminded her of what she'd lost. The wedding came and went. I never showed up. I never intended to. But Helena didn't know that. And for those 2 weeks leading up to it, she lived in constant fear of what I might do. That fear, that loss of control, that inability to predict what came next, was exactly what she'd inflicted on me when I discovered the affair. Now she understood how it felt. The truth has a way of spreading, even when you're not actively pushing it. Helena's younger sister, Margaret, reached out to me in July. She sent a Facebook message, direct, blunt. "I need to understand what happened between you and Helena. She won't talk about it. Can we meet for coffee?" We met at a Starbucks in a town neither of us lived in. Margaret was in her early 50s, wore reading glasses on a chain, looked tired. The air smelled of burnt espresso and warm pastries. The hiss of the milk steamer punctuated our silence. "Helena's always been secretive," Margaret said, stirring sugar into her latte. "But this, whatever this is, it's destroyed her. The girls won't speak to her. David barely acknowledges her. I need to know if—" She trailed off. "If what I'm hearing is true." I told her the truth. Not vindictively, but factually. The 18-month affair, the lies Helena told about her family knowing, the explicit nature of the relationship she'd minimized, the manipulation she'd attempted when I first confronted her. Margaret's face went pale. She told me it was a brief mistake, that she'd confessed to David immediately, that the girls were just being dramatic. "Would you like to see the phone records?" I asked gently. I provided evidence when asked, phone records, message screenshots, timeline documentation. Margaret wasn't the only one. Helena's nieces reached out. Extended family members who'd heard whispers and wanted to understand what had happened. I didn't seek them out. They found me, asking questions Helena had refused to answer honestly. From Margaret, I gained a sharper picture of Helena, the sister who'd always chased thrills quietly, justifying small indiscretions as harmless, building to this larger betrayal. Her motivations, Margaret speculated, stemmed from a midlife restlessness, boredom with routine, a need to feel desired again. It humanized her without excusing her. Helena's carefully curated image within her family disintegrated. The sister who'd always been so devoted to her marriage, the mother who preached honesty and integrity, the aunt everyone admired, all of it collapsed under the weight of 18 months of calculated deception. That's when Helena tried to fight back. In August, I received a letter from an attorney. Helena was pursuing a restraining order, claiming harassment. But her lawyer quickly realized what I already knew. Sharing truthful information about an affair wasn't harassment. Sending letters to directly affected parties, her husband, her daughters, wasn't illegal. I'd never threatened her, never contacted her workplace officially, never shown up at her home. I'd simply told the truth to people who deserved it to know it. The restraining order application was denied. She tried intimidation next. Her husband called Benjamin one evening, demanding I back off and leave them alone. Benjamin, sitting across from me at our kitchen table, his face etched with the weariness of his own regrets, put the call on speaker. I have no control over Lisa's actions. She's making her own choices about how to handle what we did, Benjamin said, his voice flat.
The irony wasn't lost on me. Helena wanted control over the consequences of her actions, while having exercised no control over the actions themselves. Her family's questioning intensified. Why had she lied? Why continue lying, even after being caught? What else hadn't she been honest about? The affair became a lens through which they re-examined everything they thought they knew about her. Helena's social circle shrank. Invitations stopped coming. Holiday plans excluded her. She'd become the family member people whispered about, pitied, or avoided altogether. Sometimes, late at night, I wondered if I'd gone too far, if my need for justice had crossed into cruelty. But then I'd remember her voice on that first phone call, smooth, confident, dismissive, lying to my face about her family knowing, treating my pain like an inconvenience. Helena had earned every consequence she was facing. 18 months after discovering the affair, I sent the final letters. These weren't like the others. These were comprehensive, a complete timeline of the affair with every piece of evidence I'd gathered. Phone records showing the escalation of contact, screenshots of messages revealing not just the physical intimacy, but the emotional planning, the deception, the moments where Helena and Benjamin had laughed about keeping secrets from me. I sent copies to everyone who mattered. Helena's daughters again, her sisters, her closest friends, people who'd given her the benefit of the doubt, people who'd believed her version of events. The graphic nature of the screenshots left no room for interpretation or minimization. Sarah and Emily, who'd begun to soften slightly after months of distance, I'd seen Sarah like one of Helena's Instagram posts, recoiled completely. The finality of their rejection was immediate and absolute. Blocked numbers, returned letters unopened. Emily sent a single text before cutting contact forever. I don't know who you are, but you're not the mother I thought I had. Helena's world didn't just crack, it shattered. I monitored Benjamin's phone obsessively during this period, intercepting Helena's increasingly desperate attempts to reach him. She called from different numbers, sent emails to accounts she thought I didn't know about, even tried messaging through old mutual acquaintances. Every attempt I blocked or deleted before Benjamin saw it. She was screaming for help, for explanation, for some way to regain control of the narrative, but I'd closed every door. Then on a rainy October afternoon, the kind where the sky hung low and gray, rain drumming steadily on the roof, my phone rang from an unknown number. I answered, expecting another blocked plea,
Lisa. Helena's voice was raw, stripped bare like gravel underfoot. Please, I know it's you. I can't do this anymore. I said nothing. The silence stretched, filled only by the patter of rain and her ragged breathing. I've lost everything, she whispered. My girls, David. My family looks at me like I'm poison. I see it in their eyes. I did this. I know I did. But 18 months? It's been 18 months of this hell. What more do you want? I gripped the phone tighter, the plastic cool against my palm. I wanted you to feel it. Every day of those 18 months you stole from me.
The uncertainty, the isolation, the way your world crumbles because of choices you made. She sobbed then, a broken guttural sound that echoed through the line. I get it now. God, I get it. Just stop, please. Consequences don't stop because you ask them to, I replied. You taught me that. I hung up. The rain intensified, blurring the windows, washing the world clean outside, while something settled inside me. My acquaintance, who'd become an unwitting source of information, told me Helena had stopped leaving her house except for work. David had filed for separation in September. Sarah and Emily had made it clear she wouldn't be part of their lives moving forward. Family events happened without her. Her name became synonymous with betrayal in every circle she'd once belonged to. The psychological toll was visible even from a distance. My acquaintance saw her at the grocery store once. Significant weight loss, haunted appearance. The vibrant, confident woman who'd once thought she could manipulate me into silence had become a shell. I sat in my kitchen one evening in October, looking at the timeline I'd kept. 18 months of carefully orchestrated consequences, one for each month of her affair with my husband. The paper felt heavy in my hands, ink slightly smudged from handling. It was done. Helena had learned what it felt like to have your life systematically dismantled by someone else's choices, to watch helplessly as relationships dissolved, to realize that actions have consequences that don't end just because you want them to. I gave her exactly what she'd given me, 18 months of unraveling. And now, finally, I could breathe. Helena lives in a different world now. Her daughters don't speak to her. Sarah's wedding photos appeared on Facebook. Beautiful ceremony, radiant bride, conspicuous absence where a mother should have stood. David finalized their divorce in December. Extended family interactions are rare and strained when they happen at all. Margaret told me Helena didn't attend Thanksgiving or Christmas. Her reputation, once carefully maintained, is permanently marked by 18 months of choices she thought she'd never have to answer for. I didn't destroy Helena's life. She did that herself. I simply made sure she couldn't escape the consequences. People ask me sometimes if I feel guilty, if I regret the 18 months I spent systematically unraveling her world. The answer is complicated. Do I wish the affair had never happened? Absolutely. Do I wish Benjamin had been the man I thought he was? Every single day. But given what did happen, given Helena's lies, her manipulation, her complete lack of remorse, I don't regret holding her accountable. Benjamin's journey through this has been his own quiet storm. In the early months, he withdrew, haunted by his weakness, attending therapy alone at first, then begging me to join. He confessed the affair fed a void, midlife doubts, the thrill of being wanted anew, but his words often rang hollow against my pain. Over time, his remorse deepened into action, yielding control of finances, accepting my boundaries without protest, living with the knowledge that trust rebuilds in fragments, if at all. I couldn't mirror the pain she'd caused. That kind of betrayal isn't something you can replicate. But I could ensure she understood that actions have weight,
that deception has costs, that you can't dismantle someone's life and walk away unscathed. What I learned during those 18 months surprised me. I'm far more patient than I ever knew, more strategic, more capable of playing the long game than I gave myself credit for. The woman who discovered that affair, shattered, disbelieving, drowning in grief, wouldn't recognize the woman I became. I reclaimed something Helena and Benjamin had taken from me: agency, control over my own narrative, the power to decide how consequences would unfold. As for Benjamin, that's a story still being written. We're still married, though what that means now is different than it was before. He moved back into our bedroom after 6 months, but the intimacy we once had hasn't returned. Financial arrangements have shifted significantly in my favor. I control the accounts now, make the decisions about major purchases, manage our investments. Trust, once broken, doesn't simply regenerate. He knows that the life we had before is gone, and what remains is something we're both navigating carefully. The divorce papers sit unsigned in my desk drawer, a reminder of options I may yet choose. He asks me sometimes if I'll ever forgive him. I tell him the truth. I don't know. Some days I look at him and see the man I married. Other days I see a stranger who betrayed me. Some people might call what I did revenge. I call it accountability delivered with precision and patience. Helena wanted to escape consequences. She lied to her family. She manipulated me. She gambled that her life could absorb an 18-month affair without permanent damage. She lost that gamble. And me? I survived. I endured. I learned that betrayal can either break you or teach you exactly how strong you really are. I chose strength. I chose strategy. I chose to ensure that justice, my version of it, was served. And I would make the same choice again. If you've ever been betrayed or found yourself in a situation where you needed to reclaim control, share your story in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe, because there are more stories of resilience and empowerment just like this one, and you won't want to miss them.